This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire, the no-show. Who set you back because they didn't show up on day one, or day two, or ever again. And now your product launch is delayed because you're talking to alien abduction podcasters to track them down. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can help make sure your next hire sticks. In fact, businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
My name is Ryan Pack, and this is Soundtrack Your Life, where we speak with a guest about a soundtrack that is important to them. Today, our guest is Darin Lundberg, host of Nostalgia Cast and the Back to Bluey podcast. So welcome, Darin.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. This has been a long time coming. I think we even scheduled like an episode, we scheduled to do this like a couple of months ago, and we had to push it back with like personal things. So yeah, this has been, like I said, long time coming. I'm honored to join your roster of guests here. So appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of both your podcasts. Obviously, I think Back to Bluey is more for parents. So if you don't have a parent, you may not listen to that one, but you should. It's a very clever show.
Oh, thank you.
And,
yeah,
enjoy the podcast. People on Apple Podcasts who have reviewed your show are savages.
Are they? Yeah. We don't. I avoid the reviews for some reason. Just actually Rob looks into that stuff, and so I'm assuming that he just sees the negative things and then just doesn't tell me about them. So
I was just like, man, this Bluey fandom is like K-pop fandom. Like, how dare you have a show when there's already another show that I like? And I'm like, you can have multiple shows.
Yeah. Broaden your horizons a little bit.
Yeah. We're not the only soundtrack podcast that exists, and you are more than welcome to check out the other ones.
Yeah. Well, you're the podcast on soundtracks. That's my report. My review of your show.
Well, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So if people are interested in Nostalgia Cast or Back to Blue, why don't you share about what those podcasts are about?
Okay. Well, in today's age of there was just an article on RogerEbert.com about how, film critics and the film critics' job is kind of being lessened and kind of devoured by online reviews. And the problem with online reviews is they're just, you only have so many characters in a tweet. And then, so all you can do is drop like generalities. And so I don't feel like movies can really be, just processed in a tweet. You have to be able to talk about like the nuances and things like that. So one of the things that I pride myself on in Nostalgia Cast is Johnny, my best childhood friend, and I, we take these movies that meant something to us. Like when we started, we just did like obscure 80s like movies that people hadn't, that you'd find like in a Walmart van and say, oh, $3, like I'll buy it. That's the price of a rental, like on Amazon or something like that. And then you kind of process them and go, oh, I haven't seen this in 20 years. Man, this doesn't hold up. Or man, this holds up even better than I thought. And now we're doing like 90s movies. We figured out we can be nostalgic about movies that we love too. But again, my point is that if you're going to take these movies, it requires a lot more than just like snarky gotcha-isms. It requires more than just tweets about movies. So we like to have these really deep, in-depth conversations about what these movies mean and the context which they play. So again, that's Nostalgia Cast. And then Back to Bluey, like especially with speaking of John Williams' Disclosure Day playing in theaters, that was a movie about empathy that really built to like all the world is just clamping down on you, and you just want to be able to have conversations again and communicate again. So and very last word of that movie, spoiler, is just listen, right? So we want to be able to listen to people, talk to people, and that's the generation of or the origin story of Back to Bluey. Rob and I were just feeling like we were just clamped by the world, and so we latched onto Bluey, the Australian animated cartoon, and just found so much solace and joy in that. And so we decided, let's kind of get rid of all the hate and the clamping down and talk about something uplifting and something that actually helps us as parents. Like you said, it's more for parents than for kids or cinephiles, anything like that. But yeah, we were talking off mic, and I appreciate that you listen, because we need people to talk to, right? You know what I mean? We need to be able to talk again and be able to hear each other again, instead of just. That's why I can't get into politics, because it's all just yelling at each other, yelling at walls. You know what I mean? And so I think Bluey's kind of a, nostalgia cast for talking about movies, Bluey for talking about how our feels. I think that I pride myself on those two podcasts being something that you can kind of learn from and grow from.
Yeah, and they're both great. I checked them both out. I've checked them both out, and back to Bluey, especially because I am a parent of a 7 and 4-year-old girl. It's a show that is very much my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to listen to about what you guys have to say about the episodes. I relay a lot of what you guys say to my wife, because she also watches it, watches the show. She would have found what's the episode where Baby Race. I was like, oh, you gotta watch Baby Race, and it's after I heard your episode about it. I was like, oh, you got to watch this episode. And she was just like, eh. And then like a couple weeks ago, she's like posting on Instagram, like, sometimes Bluey is for parents too. And posted like a clip of Baby Race. And I was like, you would have watched this episode like 6 months ago if you listened to me.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing with Bluey, right? You think of it as being a cartoon, and you're like, I don't have time for this. You know what I mean? And then you sit down and you watch it again, these little 7-minute nuggets of truth and wisdom. And they're so joyful, and they appeal to kids and adults. And so it's hard to get. That's part of what Back to Bluey is, right? Trying to talk about these episodes so that, we can actually learn and realize that there's lessons in these shows about anthropomorphic cartoon dogs. So we're talking about these 7-minute nuggets of wisdom and truth, right? And a lot of people don't think they can learn that stuff from anthropomorphic cartoon dogs. But after you watch like 2 or 3 episodes of Bluey, I think that those like. And what's the word I'm looking for? Those kind of biases kind of seep away, and you're like, oh, this show actually speaks to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so as a parent, I don't have the luxury of being able to watch the show chronologically.
Yeah.
My kids will latch onto an episode and we'll watch it like 10 times, and then they'll see the thumbnail for another episode that looks fun, and we'll jump to that one and watch that one 10 times. So What's great about your podcast is I kind of use it for episode recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Like what does Darin and Rob like? What episodes are they picking? Because when I have a chance to pick an episode, I'm going to pick one of those.
Yeah, so you know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people podcasting is strange, because maybe they, I don't know, maybe a lot of people listen to podcasts without watching the movies. I know I have a hard time. Like I don't get to watch as many movies as I want, and so I have to tell people, like. I guess podcasting is the way to get me to watch certain movies. So if you want me to watch a movie, just ask me to be on your show, and then I'll end up watching. So I get it. I understand where you're coming from.
So speaking of movies, today we are going to talk about the 1980 Irvin Kershner film, The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
So Darin, why are we going to talk about The Empire Strikes Back?
Well, originally, sorry, so much backstory. You asked which one movie I wanted to cover, and I said Backdraft, which is that's my defining score, right? The Hans Zimmer 1991 Ron Howard film. And then I realized as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, I've already talked about Backdraft at length, like in an episode we did, and in another episode with Brian Scuttle of Sonic Cinema. And so I was like, I don't know if I can add. I'll just end up repeating stuff. So you can always go check out those episodes. So I thought, what other soundtrack is my favorite? And I think Empire Strikes Back is my all-time favorite John Williams score. I just think that it's so breathless, and I don't know if because sequels weren't really a huge thing back when Empire came. I know like Jaws 2 was out, and probably like Cannonball Run 2 or something like that had been out, Smokey and the Bandit 2. And so I don't know if like scores existed where they took original material and added stuff to it to create this kind of tapestry of like a new world. And so the fact that John Williams like created 3 new themes plus multiple like motifs for this movie, this is like the least lazy score I've ever heard, especially when you go like to, again, not calling John Williams scores lazy, but like you look at Attack of the Clones, that only really adds 1 new theme, right? The Anakin and the Padme theme. And like I think Force Awakens added like the Rey theme, the Kylo Ren theme, and then like the Rebel theme, and so that's another exciting score. But I mean, you know what I mean? It's like this. It's not a lazy score. He's not just resting on his laurels. I think John Williams later on. He has great themes like Jurassic Park. I know a lot of people really like that theme, which is great, but most of it is just kind of noise. I don't know if that makes any sense. Where there's not like a lot of memorable melody, like Raiders of the Lost Ark has a lot of like every note of that score you can whistle and kind of hum along to. And then Jurassic Park just kind of has a lot of atonal, like nice tones. I'm not trying to knock Jurassic Park or anything, but you compare it to Empire Strikes Back and like, you know, he's got like a Boba Fett theme motif. He's got a droid motif. He's got a theme for Lando, and that's on top of like the new Yoda theme, the Imperial March, and then the love theme between for Han and Leia. And he's got like every action scene too has a different personality. So they've got the asteroid field chase. They've got the Minot cave, when they escape from that. You've got when they're trying to escape from Bespin. So I don't. We'll talk about it a little more. I just think it's one of the most exciting and most original and least lazy scores I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up with the fact that, you know, there weren't a lot of sequels, and, you know, for John Williams, like, he's creating a cinematic score universe for Star Wars, right? Like,
yeah.
He didn't know that there was going to be 9 of these movies and plus, you know, spin-offs or whatever. You know, he thought this. Yeah, I don't know if he knew there was going to be a third film in this trilogy.
Right, never knew. Right,
and you know, and for him to kind of, he's almost thinking ahead and just kind of creating, all these themes and motifs in this film. It's kind of incredible.
Yes.
You know, maybe by movie 9, maybe he's like, well, I have so many themes, I've got to balance.
Yeah, we won't talk about Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I mean, I have a semi funny story about Rise of Skywalker, but we'll see if we get to that.
Okay, I love to hear funny stories about that. I don't really like talking about that movie, but I like to hear funny stories about it.
You know, if we talk about kind of the legacy of the John Williams scores, you know, we went to go see Rise of Skywalker as like a family for like Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, you know, it's the 9th movie. It's going to be the last one of this trilogy. They're going to take a break before they make any more of these.
Yeah.
You know, let's just go and see it in 4DX. I haven't seen a movie in 4DX before. This seems like the movie to go watch in 4DX. And, you know, the movie was what it was. But my niece, who, you know, was born in like the late 90s, was like, oh, that movie was interesting. I should go back and watch the other 8.
Oh, no. That's really funny because I've been watching a lot of YouTube reaction videos, and it's so frustrating. There's a lot of things that are frustrating about those, but they're watching like spoofs of movies, and they haven't seen the movies that are being spoofed. And so it's like, why are you going to watch a movie if you're just sitting there going, I don't understand this. Where did that come from? And then you just sit there kind of like po-faced because you don't get any of the jokes. I'm not saying that that's how it was for her, but that's just funny. Like, you're watching a movie that's literally a greatest hits like montage of the previous films. Was she lost, or did she enjoy it?
She seemed to enjoy it because she wanted to go back and watch the other ones.
Exactly. Okay, so she didn't hate it enough that she's like, what is the point? So that's good. It's good to know.
Right. But you know, that's my funny story about that movie. And also, you like trying to like not being able to explain 4DX to my dad.
Oh no.
And then like I think right before the movie started, they showed like a commercial that was shot in 4DX to kind of give you a taste of it.
Okay.
And my dad was like, oh, that was kind of scary. And I was like, yeah, the next 2 hours is going to be just like that.
That's great. Reminds me of when my dad first got a cell phone and we tried to get him to put a cover on it. And he's like, if you put a cover on it, though, nobody's going to be able to hear me. So I understand. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. I guess.
I mean, there's a bit of a language barrier as well, you know?
Right. It's
funny. So it's always fun to kind of go. So like this movie is like kind of just part of culture for me, right? Like I just was born, and then I was like, oh yeah, everyone loves Star Wars, and everyone knows the Imperial March and these things. But it's kind of fun to go back and like actually like learn about like, well, when it came out, the soundtrack was like the first double vinyl album to ever be released.
Right. Yeah.
And then the UK version only got 10 songs.
Yeah. That's weird. The pressing for those is strange. I know when they did the CD too, and they remastered it for CD, they couldn't have all of the tracks on there, which is, I mean, nowadays you look at soundtracks. I'm a sucker for like recording sessions, and like alternate versions. So because you get the full, I want to know like the full scope of what a music score is. Hans Zimmer especially is notorious because he'll mix like bits and pieces from like all over the movie to create one track, and that's great because you get like a sampling, but it's like frustrating because you want to hear how it plays. You know, you've got so much dialogue and so much sound like going over a music score that you can't really get the nuances of it, if that makes sense, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
So I just really like the idea, and speaking of the Empire Strikes Back and, you know, the LP or whatever, having that almost a full score is something to, it's funny to think of it being available all the way back then when you have to kind of scramble for recording sessions today. I know that you've got like La La Land and Vari Sarabandi or whatever, they like to release, you know, the recording sessions or behind the scenes stuff. But it's funny to think that, like I said, they had that available for you in an LP for this movie that was such a huge hit.
But only in America.
Yeah, only in America, because we get the best stuff, I guess. I don't know.
He uses the London Symphony, but the Americans get the full recording sessions.
Yeah, it's a little bit of, there's some bias in there, I think.
Just a little bit.
Right.
Obviously, people were excited about The Empire Strikes Back, and especially the soundtrack as well. So Star Wars won the Oscar for Best Original Score, New Hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, there's reason to believe that, like, oh, you know, The Empire Strikes Back, people are going to want to buy the soundtrack because the original won the Oscar. Mm-hmm. So The Empire Strikes Back comes out, does perfectly fine at the box office. Critics are mixed, and John Williams basically gets shut out at the Oscars and the Golden Globes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not huge on Oscars because I don't like, again, Empire Strikes Back being my favorite score and then not even being nominated is kind of the reason why I'm not into Oscars, because I don't think like awards really are prognosticators of what's going to last. It's like, it like tells you what's popular at the time, but not like what's going to be popular like 10 years from now. And so I really can't, does that make sense? I can't take a lot of stock in Oscars because the stuff that I love, and I know people are out there that are like, oh, if it doesn't win an Oscar, then that, I don't know. It seems like they're like, if it doesn't win an Oscar, then it's not worth my time. Or they're like really crushed by the fact that I'm like, but if you like it, like, what does it matter if it wins awards or not? Like, why? I guess I understand that we need the validation of that, and it's nice, but you should be able to love what you love without worrying about what kind of awards or what kind of attention that it gets. I didn't even know that until you just told me. I had assumed that this was nominated for Best Score, because why wouldn't it be?
Oh, I mean, it was nominated, just didn't win.
Oh, just didn't win. Okay. Well, also, like, they probably thought, well, Star Wars is already out, and they're just repeating, like, themes, right? And I don't know if, like, the Academy or people, like, take into account, like, how it, you know, like I said, the tapestry of it, how that plays. Maybe they just hear, because I guess notoriously Nino Rota was denied for The Godfather because he used the theme from a movie that he'd previously scored. So they reneged on their nomination for it. And then when Godfather 2 came out, they nominated it again, and I think it maybe even won Best Score that year, even though it still used the Godfather theme that they shut out. So, yeah, that's interesting to think about.
Yeah, you know, we don't need to go on a huge anti-Oscars
sure, we
tangent.
Don't.
I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And you know, every year we'll do a, you know, Oscars episode for, you know, the best original song and we'll talk about score as well. They have really weird rules for like best original score.
Yeah.
You know, I think something similar happened to Johnny Greenwood with There Will Be Blood, where it's like, oh, you used a piece of something that was previously released, so this is not an original score. You are now disqualified.
Oh, okay.
And I think everyone was like, oh, that should have won. And it didn't even get nominated because of a technicality.
Right. Well, of course, your show is called Soundtrack Your Life. It's not Soundtrack your Oscars. And so that's really what we're talking about here, right? Movies that actually mean something to us personally. And so that's one of the reasons why the show is so great.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people of a certain age decided that the Oscars were not that important after, Pulp Fiction didn't win Best Original Picture. So
yeah, my movie wasn't nominated, so I don't need to watch these things anymore. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way, like, if you haven't checked out movies in a while, you're like, oh, this won the Oscar, like, I'll check that out because I want something new. But I don't feel like people need, especially with the internet, why do you need validation from the Academy when you can just go on Twitter?
Right, yeah, exactly. And then what were you saying? Like, John Williams is maybe the most famous composer of all time, and he won what, like only 5 Oscars?
Yeah, he won 5 Oscars, and 3 of them were in the 70s.
Oh wow, okay.
So it was Fiddler, Jaws, New
Star
Hope.
Wars. Yeah.
And then then he goes on a bit of a dry spell because apparently his composing skills degrade.
Right.
And then he doesn't win. Then he wins again for E.T. And then his last one is Schindler's List in 1993. So the past 30 years he's just been lazy. He's been
slacking. Yeah, John Williams is just not what he used to be.
Yeah, his scores have just become so derivative.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm talking about with Empire Strikes Back. Is it does use the Force theme. It does use the Rebel fanfare. It does use Leia's theme. So it has all those that play. But again, those are identifying. Richard Wagner created the leitmotif. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Where you'd have a song that would identify a character, and so that's again he's just introducing more of that. He's like, I know that the Imperial March is identified with Darth Vader now, but it was originally identified with, the Empire as a whole, right? And so, yeah, that's, like I said, it's not a lazy score because he invents so many new things, and then he's able to, jump back and forth between the old and the new. I know that, what's the track called? Jedi Master Revealed, where Yoda reveals himself. He stops being the fuddy-duddy, right? And the frustrating fuddy-duddy, and reveals himself as the Jedi Master that Luke has been searching for. And they do play the Luke's theme. They do play Yoda's theme. They do play the Force theme. And then later, too, for Carbon Freeze, that one keeps jumping back and forth between the love theme for Han and Leia and the Imperial March. So they're kind of battling a little bit. So again, I don't know if people thought of this movie as being derivative. And it's funny to think that I've always thought that Empire Strikes Back was always loved, but when you do research on it, you do find out, like you said, that reaction was mixed, right? Maybe not quite as mixed as Last Jedi, but again, pretty mixed. And then now it's regarded as maybe not just one of the best sequels, not one of the best science fiction films, but one of the best movies ever made. And it is not, the reason for that is it's not just derivative, it's a new experience that gives you. And that's what we want from sequels, right, Ryan? You want something that gives you what you expect, but also takes these characters and the story to a new place. And again, that's what Empire Strikes Back does. That's what John Williams' score does.
Yeah, and even if you compare it to other, science fiction movies or other, action movies, this is a space opera. Like, it is treated as an opera.
Yeah.
Which you can't say about a lot of its peers.
Right. And if you look at, I think the interesting thing when you think of Star Wars is, for A New Hope, Williams sampled a lot from Gustav Holst's The Planets, especially like Mars, the Bringer of War, right? And there are comparisons you can find on YouTube where it literally, once you hear them compared side to side, you're like, oh my gosh, that feels like John Williams is ripping it off. But yeah, also Hans Zimmer ended up kind of copying Mars, Bringer of War for Gladiator. He used that a lot in his score for that movie. So I think it's more of a sampling. I don't know if that makes any sense. And if you look at Star Wars, again, that's a mix of The Hidden Fortress. That's a mix of cliffhanger serials. That's a mix of war films. That's a mix of Flash Gordon, right? So John Williams sampling from Holst and sampling from all these other like composers, classical romantic composers. I've always thought of that being part and parcel with what Star Wars was, where Star Wars is kind of a sampling and giving you a new experience, if that makes any sense. That's exactly what his score does for A New Hope.
Yeah, and you could also say the RZA literally does that for the Kill Bill movies.
Yes.
He's literally sampling other martial arts films and mixing it into one tapestry.
Right, and that works for Tarantino because that's what I don't want to call Tarantino a rip-off artist. Maybe he's an homage artist because that's what he does. But yeah, that score definitely ties in with what he's doing with that movie. So yeah, that's great.
In 1977 and 1980, people are not thinking about interpolation the way they are in the 2020s. Hip-hop hadn't been invented yet where people knew the word sample.
Right. And then I think the problem with a lot of people today is they have a problem like picking up on nuances, like a lot of Gen Z. Is it Gen Z who basically controls everything right now? Where they would look at Star Wars and think, oh, this is ripping it off. And then today you have movies that just give you like the same thing again so you can point at it and clap for it and go, I remember that in this other movie that I liked, right? And I think that's what's missing today is people, and that's what AI does really, is it just samples something that somebody else does and tries to turn it into art, but then it doesn't do anything creative with it. So back in the 70s, you have Lucas and Scorsese and Spielberg and Coppola and De Palma who are taking the love of these movies that they've had since childhood, and they're remixing them. It's not just, oh, let me just remake like The Great Escape or something like that. They're going to take a movie, or let's just redo cliffhanger serials. No, what Spielberg and Lucas did for that is they took that inspiration, but then they created Indiana Jones, maybe one of the most, I would say, the greatest adventure character because he makes mistakes. Like he's triumphant sometimes, he's goofy, all that stuff. They made something new out of old stuff and made it feel fresh. And I think the problem with today's movies, and again, you look at Rise of Skywalker, which just uses themes that you recognize just so you can point at them and they don't really make sense, like Luke lifting the X-Wing or whatever. It doesn't make sense for him to be using Yoda's theme in the movie. What they use Yoda's theme for in the movie is to say, oh, remember that part in Empire Strikes Back when Yoda did this? So I don't know, does that make sense? There's just a disconnect with the way that movies were made back in the 70s and 80s and even 90s versus how they're made now. I think there's a lot less imagination, and that goes double for scores even.
That's completely true. I mean, now it's just, let's just reboot it.
Yeah. With all the same stuff. Like there's nothing, I don't know, like when was the last time we had a creation like Indiana Jones? Was it Captain Jack Sparrow? I mean, you know what I mean? What was the last indelible figure that somebody created that can match Han Solo, that can match Indiana Jones, that can match the Terminator, stuff like that. I think we're really kind of lacking today. And that's what's frustrating about Gen Z is they can't pick up on those nuances. They don't understand that when they watch Empire Strikes Back, they've been informed, or Star Wars, they've been informed by countless movies made in the wake of Star Wars. So they're unable to appreciate the impact that Star Wars had. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I get it. Though I do have a funny Gen Z story.
Oh, so I love those too.
So I was watching a Korean variety show.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like a mix of a travel show and just, they make like basically these 4 girls like play games for food and stuff like that. But it's, but anyway, so one of the girls is a K-pop idol. She's born in the 2000s. She's born after the prequel started coming out. But they're about to start playing a game, and she starts humming the Imperial March, the Imperial March theme, because she's like, "Oh, you guys are in trouble. Like, I'm going to beat you at this game." And I just want to know how this like 20-something-year-old girl knows that piece of music. Like, obviously, everyone knows Star Wars, even on a global scale, right? Like, everyone knows Star Wars. Everyone knows Avatar. I'm not saying, oh, I don't know why Koreans know Star Wars, but to pick up on this theme, like, she came out, or she was born basically, midway through. She was probably born after Attack of the Clones, you know? So it's not like, I've met people who are, at the like elder Gen Z where they're like, oh, I watch Star Wars like in chronological order of like where they take place in canon. Yeah. So they started with Phantom Menace and then they ended with Rise of Skywalker. Like I've met people who have done that And, that's a fascinating experience that I will never be able to have, right? Because I grew up with the originals. But for this person who was born pretty much after the prequels and, from everything I've seen and read about K-pop people, like they don't have like the most time to go and watch movies. Like, I would highly doubt that she had time to watch all 9 of the films. But for her to like know the song and how to properly use it for comedic effect in this variety show is very fascinating to me.
Yeah. Because again, I think, when you watch YouTube reactions, a lot of them are like, oh, that's the meme, right? Where they're recognizing things in like a TikTok kind of format versus, or I know people that maybe hum the Imperial March without knowing what it's from. You know what I mean? Without having seen a Star Wars movie. Some people might use it incorrectly. So I don't, and again, that's a fascinating experience too, because if you watch them in chronological order, in Attack of the Clones, you're watching that, and then they break into the Imperial March at the end, like you don't have the same reaction that like we did watching that movie in a theater, where all of a sudden it starts playing that theme. You're like, oh boy, here we go. It's just a piece of music that they play, and it doesn't register. So that's kind of an odd way to watch movies, I think, because the prequels are informing what you've already seen. So when you start with the prequels, like what is there to inform? So it's interesting. And maybe John Williams thought of it, because I know he doesn't really play the Star Wars Rebel fanfare because the Rebels don't exist, right? He has to play the Star Wars theme, but he gives hints of it. So maybe he kind of played with that as far as the tapestry goes. But I don't know. You know what I mean? It's funny to watch, like I said, to watch a spoof movie without knowing the movies that they're spoofing. It's kind of the same thing watching a prequel without watching the original movies first.
Yeah. But, I guess some people, or people of a certain age, because their parents were fans, they were like, oh, there's this new movie that came out, so we'll just start them here.
Right. So, everybody has a different way of watching movies or listening to music scores, listening to soundtracks. So I can't criticize that. It's just different from how I was raised or how I think you should experience movies for the first time.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe they thought Phantom Menace was just like more kid friendly, so they thought, let's start the kids on that. But
and it is. It's very kid friendly. So I'm not trying to knock that at all. I'm just saying it's a weird. My brain can't function that way. So it would be a fascinating experience watching it from that perspective.
Yeah, I'm like slightly jealous.
Right.
Just how would it be to, experience Star Wars in that fashion?
Right. Well, I think too, like Drew McWeeny, when he was showing his kids Star Wars, and again, I'd shown my kids Star Wars in the prequels. My wife famously bowed out. She watched the original trilogy with the kids, but then when the prequels, I decided to show those to the kids. She's like, I'm not bothering with those. But anyway, Drew McWeeny, when he was showing them to his kids, he showed them Star Wars: A New Hope, then Empire Strikes Back, and then it had that twist. And then he went back and he showed them Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith as kind of a flashback. And then he showed them Return of the Jedi. And I remember reading how he did that and going, that would have been a great way to show the kids. You know what I mean? Like instead of having the prequels come first, you could have it like as a flashback kind of thing, and that gets you. I don't know how you feel about the prequels, Ryan. Like everybody, some people love them, some people hate them, but I just think you'd want to end on Return of the Jedi. You want to end on a high note as opposed to ending with people going into, hiding or whatever at the end of Revenge of the Sith. You want to watch Return of the Jedi, how they have the evil defeated, stuff like that. So I just thought that was kind of a fun way. If you're going to do that, that would have been a great way to show your kids and have them experience Star Wars that way.
Yeah. Maybe that's how I'll introduce it to my kids.
Okay. Yeah. I'm jealous of that. You got to tell me how that goes. And also, like, you talk about the 20-something knowing the Imperial March. That's how iconic. She might not have seen Empire Strikes Back. I don't know if she actually said that or anything, but the way that at least she knew, like you said, how to use that correctly instead of using it like in a completely different context. But that's what I mean about these scores and these movies being so iconic that you know them without actually having to see the movie itself.
I interviewed a friend for Purple Rain.
Okay. Whoa.
And I was like, and he's a little bit older, so I was like, you were a Prince fan before the movie came out. you can't go online to watch any trailers.
Yeah.
So there's this Prince movie coming out, and all you have is, I think he said in the newspaper, there's just a picture of like him and his motorcycle.
Right.
And I was like, what did you think you were going to see with this movie?
Okay.
And, he was like, well, I was excited about it because they had released some of the songs from the soundtrack in the previous summer, but, nobody knew what to expect.
Right.
Nobody knew it was going to be this kind of semi-autobiographical,
Fantasia
story.
movie,
Yeah.
yeah.
They didn't know. They just were like, well, the songs are good, so those songs are going to be in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there'll be more good songs in the movie. Like they really had no idea. They were going in blind for Purple Rain,
Okay. Yeah, that must have been a trip. Interesting. Well, let me ask you too, for Soundtrack Your Life, like you seem to do more like soundtracks, right? Like I've listened to the Batman Forever episode, That Thing You Do episode, Royal Tannenbaums. So you do all, and if I had it to do over again, maybe I would have chosen like Footloose or Flashdance or Ghostbusters, something like that. We'd be able to talk about those tracks. How would you say that for Soundtrack Your Life, you do more of those compilation soundtracks versus scores? Because I know that also you did Transformers: Dark of the Moon, you did Raiders of the Lost Ark, so you've done a bunch of music scores. But I was looking through your queue and like, oh, these are like compilation stuff, which I love. What is I mean, I guess my question is like, do you think you're more of a compilation show, or is doing a music score something that's like a treat, kind of to break up those compilation soundtracks?
The initial idea was to focus on the compilation scores.
Right.
Soundtracks, these compilation soundtracks are a big way, or they were a major influence on how I discovered a lot of music growing up. Mm. So I know that, I knew that I could have conversations about, the Royal Tenenbaums, because I could, this is how I found out about this band, or, the use of Elliott Smith in that scene, was very, was kind of mind blowing for me, because I was a big Elliott Smith fan, and to see it kind of used in such a profound way was,
right.
It was really eye opening for me. But, we had the opportunity to talk to people who really love scores, and I didn't want to like shut the door on like talking to interesting people. Like the Transformers: Dark of the Moon score, mm-hmm. He basically was able to write chapters of his book just by looping parts of Jablonski's score, and I was like, I want to hear about that. Mm-hmm. And that's fascinating to me. I have a bit of a screenwriting background, so I kind of relate to that, because when I'm working on a screenplay idea, I will build a soundtrack for that screenplay and listen to it over and over again. So it was kind of cool to see someone having a similar creative process. Mm-hmm. And then, we've had composers on, and I'm not going to be like, hey man, we only talk about, compilations. So we're going to have to pass, be like, oh, let's figure out how you came into scoring. 'Cause I feel like a lot of people have different journeys, different stories. I've interviewed people that were in a rock band, they were on a major label at one point. Things, they weren't turning into the next Nirvana, so it just kind of became a career pivot. And I interviewed a guy who literally saw, after watching Scream, was like, who is Mario Beltrami? I need to, like, that guy has just blown my mind. Right. I have musical talent. Now I'm going to pursue film scoring because I watched this movie that had this really awesome score that just took over my mind.
Right. I think that the compilation soundtracks are just important as the score soundtracks. Like I know when I first started collecting soundtracks, you'd only get like one track that was score and the rest. And I would kind of prize the little track. Like Thelma and Louise had like Thunderbird from Zimmer on there, or Ghostbusters had like the Ghostbusters theme, but everything else, or Dana's theme on there. But then it had mostly like songs making up that soundtrack, right? And so I think they're both important And it's fascinating talking about, because again, you're talking tapestries, right? Like Royal Tannenbaums, that thing you do, create a real musical tapestry and have based their existence around music. So it's great. And like I said, Footloose or Flashdance or Ghostbusters, all these 80s movies that were just had montages like crazy, Rocky IV or stuff like that. And so I think they're both important because sometimes songs can function as score, right? Especially in montages. But you're talking about like composers finding inspiration from different things. That's John Williams was the first composer in my life that I was like, oh, what is this? Like, why is this music like telling me something, or why am I humming a tune? And so the Jaws theme, famously, I was like, why is this theme making me scared? And so when you're a 5-year-old watching Jaws for the first time, you're trying to reconcile, why is this 2-note theme making me so afraid? And then you start looking into John Williams and his ideas for how he created it. And he created like a theme for a shark, all of that. And then Star Wars comes out. You have 2 movies in the 70s where a lot of scores back then were like woodwinds and piccolos, and they're very dated. You can pick out 70s scores like crazy. But John Williams, Lucas, and Spielberg, they decided, no, we're going to use full orchestras like Korn Gold kind of music scores, right? And so that's what Star Wars and Jaws, so basically John Williams, is what made me fall in love with music scores. And like Empire Strikes Back, which I don't know how you felt like growing up. Empire Strikes Back was my least favorite of all the Star Warses because it was dark and it didn't end, right? I loved Return of the Jedi because that was the ending. And then when the special editions came out in theaters, my whole world changed because I watched Empire Strikes Back and I was like, this movie is like so deep and it's so like philosophical and it's so exciting and it's a mix of all those things. And then you watch Return of the Jedi, which I do love Return of the Jedi, but that's like, okay, we did all the character stuff in Empire Strikes Back, but we're kind of done with that. We're just going to go and kind of finish the story and not really, sorry to go on such a big tangent. A New Hope, the characters are archetypes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have like the monomyth, and so Luke Skywalker's a symbol. Ben Kenobi's like the wise sage. Like Han Solo is the rascal, and so they were kind of 2-dimensional. But I think when you're sitting down to watch a story about spaceships and lightsabers, you want to have kind of a simple story. And yeah, you have Luke looking at the dual sunsets, right? And that's a pull that we all felt. We want to be able to be the aspirational figure like Luke, and we all long to be something more. And then the thing with Empire Strikes Back, which again ties in with the score, is it took those archetypes and it made them flesh and blood. Right. So Han Solo becomes something deeper than just the rascal because we see how Leia looks at it. Leia like falls for him. You have Luke who's trying to wrestle with, I think like when you see him in the cave trying to grab the lightsaber, he's just using Jedi magic or using the Force as like tricks that he can do, right? That's why when he's talking to Yoda and Yoda's telling him about the Force, which is like the best description of the Force in any of these movies, like before the word midichlorians were introduced to us, the way that Yoda's explaining, like it's all around us, it binds us together. It's not just about this crude matter, right? And when Yoda's lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp and Luke's like, I don't believe it. And Yoda's like, that's why you fail, right? It's not just about tricks. It's about embracing something bigger than yourself. And again, when you watch Empire Strikes Back with adult eyes, sure, it ends on a cliffhanger, but the whole movie's about fear. And it ends with Luke on a precipice. He finds out that Darth Vader's his father. He says, come join me, we'll rule the galaxy. And he gives up on his fear and dives into like the chasm, right? But then the big emotional climax is when he's hanging from that antenna. And the Luke at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back would not have been able to do this. You can see Luke reach inside himself and says, Leia, like, hear me, come and help me, right? And so that's like embracing the Force. That is a complete arc. And I think when we're kids, we miss out on that because it's very nuanced. We just want to see Luke Skywalker defeat Darth Vader and the Emperor, right? And so when you watch Empire Strikes Back, you kind of have an awakening, or at least I did. And it's the same thing with the score, because like I said, Williams didn't have to score the asteroid field like that. You know what I mean? He didn't have to score hyperspace at the end like that. He didn't have to give Lando and Cloud City a theme, but he did. And it just, like you said earlier, it's like he's creating a cinematic universe for Star Wars. And I don't, that's why this is my favorite all-time John Williams score. And again, maybe it's my all-time score, even over Backdraft, because it taught me that you can embrace and like push forward just like the movie did. I don't know. How do you feel about The Empire Strikes Back?
Yeah, I think I have similar feelings where as a kid, I was all about Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I love the Ewoks and, the happy ending and a bunch of things blowing up and a big climatic fight, It's
Right.
everything is very easy to understand in that movie.
Yeah.
This Empire Strikes Back, it's the bad guys win.
Yeah.
So as a kid, it's hard. It's like, why is this a good movie? The bad guys won.
Right. Why'd you make me watch this, Dad? Yeah.
Yeah. Why does it end like this? That's not how movies work. So yeah, definitely similar. Where I think I remember like in college, like my roommates are like, "Oh, what's your favorite Star Wars movie?" It was like Return of the Jedi, and they're like, "Ugh." And I was like, "Why? What's wrong with that?" And they're like, "Empire's so much better." And they made me watch it again. And I was like, "All right, fine."
Right.
It's like,
I like
now
that.
we're grown up.
Yeah, right. The film bro attitude of, oh, you need to watch the what, you put on your glasses, you need to watch the good one. Like, why Return of the Jedi is for kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, and you don't have to. I don't look at them like that. I don't look at Return of the Jedi as being, oh, if you like that one, that means that you don't have a functioning brain. You know what I mean? I just think that you like what you like. To me, like Empire, when you have, like I said, for Carbon Freeze, when Han is going under and he's going to be frozen, and that love theme swells to the point where we actually feel that there's a loss here. You know what I mean? Leia is losing something. She's recognized, like she says, literally, I love you, right? And so she's recognized something in him that she should have embraced earlier. And so when that music swells, you're kind of like, you feel it. And I don't think you would have felt that if in any relationship. Because again, famously in the New Hope score, when Obi-Wan dies, they play Leia's theme for some reason. Like, and it's always been a mystery. Like, why did they do that? Instead of playing some kind of Force theme. But I don't know if that makes sense. I just think that the music is just as adult in this as the story that's being told and the movie that's being presented to us.
And there's no swelling when Leia kisses Luke at the beginning of the movie.
I know, right? Everybody's just in complete silence. That's funny. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think that, because I don't think that Lucas had planned, I don't think he knew that Leia was going to be his sister at that time.
Yeah,
So
I remember watching an interview where like the cast didn't know what was going on until they read the script for Jedi.
Right.
And they're like, whoa.
Yeah, because I know we kind of like to look at the trilogy as being, oh, they planned this from the start, but they really didn't. Like you said, they didn't know if they were going to have a second or third movie. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I mean, in the 70s, you weren't like, oh yeah, like, if the first one does well, they're just gonna stamp approvals on number 2 and 3 like they do now.
Yeah, right. Where you look at something like Project Hail Mary, and then it's like, oh, they're making a cinematic universe out of it, and you're like, oh, come on! Like, the reason people liked it is because it was original. You know what I mean? And now you're turning it into you're sequelizing it, so you're kind of cheapening the idea, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a bummer. But I feel like going back to like Gen Z watching like these spoofs, and if there's a meme for the John Williams score, it'd be like for Gen Z, it would be John Williams didn't have to go so hard on the Empire Strikes Back score.
Right. That's how we look at it now, right? And I got to tell you, like the thing that was my awakening too is we watched the Utah Symphony has a thing where they would play movies and they would play along with the score. I don't know if they have that kind of thing out where you are.
Oh,
but
yeah.
when we watched it, that score, like I said, is so breathless. And I feel like the symphony had to towel off, like when they took a break, when they cut it in half, like for an intermission or whatever. I feel like they had to go backstage and like take a shower because they were just sweating profusely from having to work so hard. And when the movie ended, you're like, wow, that was an experience, because you don't really recognize how much the score plays into a movie, right? Until you're actually sitting there and it takes kind of precedence over everything else. But and again, that's the criticism of John Williams, right? People feel like he's too much. He should disappear into the background. But like I said, the asteroid field does not need to be a symphonic wonder like it is. But John Williams, especially in 1980, when they were still nominating him for Oscars, like he was no slouch. And so, yeah, again, I can't stress enough why this score just works so well for me, just because it goes the extra mile with every note, and it never takes. Because I think a lot of sequels, like we talk about these days, they just rest in their laurels a lot of the time, and so a lot of music today is atonal, and they don't feel like they have to have melody and things like that. And I don't know, do you feel that way about scores? Should they disappear into the background, or do you like it better when they kind of call attention to themselves?
I think it depends on the film. If it's a smaller film, then you want a more minimalist score.
Right.
If it's like basically a movie taking place in one building, you don't need a 250 person orchestra and cannons and stuff like that.
Right.
But if for a movie with the scope of a Star Wars, like a big blockbuster popcorn movie, like I want some memorable music in it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know what else do we need to cover? Do you think with Empire? I know we're having a wide ranging conversation about what scores me. I'm sorry that I'm kind of hijacking your podcast like that.
Oh no.
That's something that talking to you is great. They're able to cover all those things. But like I said, was there anything else that we needed to add to Empire Strikes Back? I don't know. Like, have we covered that enough?
I think so.
Okay.
Other than I think he used a 250 person orchestra, and
right.
And I think Wikipedia was quick to point out that like he used all 250 at the same time at points in the score.
Yeah. Yeah, and you really feel it, right?
Yeah. And so I can understand why, people might say like, he can be a little much at times, or, he's a composer from a different era, but I remember watching kind of a behind the scenes thing of the first Home Alone film.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking first, they were, kind of talking about the backroom deals John Hughes had to make to get it made. But then Christopher Columbus was talking about how, it didn't really feel like a Christmas movie until John Williams' score was underneath it.
Right. And I think that's what Lucas and Spielberg have said famously about him too, is like the movie doesn't really come to life until you hear Johnny Williams score it, right? And I think for something like Empire Strikes Back or Star Wars, you need these kind of bombastic scores because the movie kind of calls for that. You don't want to have maybe bombastic scores during Lincoln, you know what I mean? That might be a little bit too much for a movie like that. That's more, a think piece. But for something like this, I don't know if like I know the movie had mixed reviews, but I don't know if the music score had mixed reviews. Maybe that's just because people couldn't grasp like the size and the scope of it. But you know what I mean? I don't think that you can criticize a movie like this for being too much because, like I said, you want to have John Williams be just as much of a character as the actual actors and characters in the movie.
Yeah, like we said before, it's an opera.
Yeah. I think that's the difference too, is there's a difference between science fiction and space opera, right? Science fiction, I think, of as being 2001 or Arrival movies, or Blade Runner, movies that make you think about your place in humanity. And I think a lot of people, when they sit down to watch those movies, they don't really enjoy them as much because they want the pew pew laser battles and space, that kind of thing. And so space opera is more of what those people are looking for. You're looking for the Flash Gordons or the Masters of the Universe and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. You're looking for something that does have like that kind of adventure feel to it. So I don't know. I think a lot of people kind of misconstrue what science fiction versus space opera means. So I like that you brought that up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So sometimes on this podcast, we like to play a little game.
Okay.
It's called Life in 3 Tracks, where we ask our guests to pick a song. So this is a movie based on your life.
Okay, right.
And you're going to pick a song for your montage scene, your romance scene, and your action scene.
Okay. You kind of threw that on me before we started recording, and I've been like really nervous and racking because I want to be impressive. You know what I mean? So just off the top of my head, if I'm going to do maybe I'm cheating here, but you're using songs from other soundtracks, right, to kind of score my life. That's kind of what we're doing here.
It doesn't have to be from a soundtrack. It can be just like a pop song, but
okay. Well, I'm more thought of it as like, again, thoughts would come to me. I have these notes up saying montage, romance, action. What would I put? So for a montage, I would have to have "You're the Best" from Karate Kid. Who, top of my head, I can't remember who sings that. Do you know who sings that at the top of your head? I could look it up, but maybe that's what you're for.
Joe Esposito.
Oh, okay. Never knew that. So we learned something new. For romance, I think I would do, when I think of romantic movies, I don't particularly like the movie itself, but as far as scores go, it's really swoony. For romance, I would have the Somewhere in Time theme by John Barry. Like I would just think of that as being like a kind of a swooning, sweeping romance for my life. I would love to have that kind of, montage or that kind of romance scene in my movie. And then for action, for some reason, I just thought of Maniac by Michael Cimbello from Flashdance. That would be a fun movie to score like to shoot a gunfight or a car chase against. Because famously in Flashdance, it's just her dancing, right? I think it would be funny to kind of juxtapose it to something else. So I don't know. Those are the three that I would pick. Those are just off the top of my head. If you told me about this, when we plan on doing the episode, I'm sure I would have come up with better answers. But there you go.
No, all three songs that you picked, no one has picked before.
Oh, good.
And I can see all of those songs being used. So
okay.
Thank you for
throwing darts at a wall. You're welcome. Thanks for allowing me to play. I appreciate that. I know that when we started recording, you're like, if you suck at this, man, we'll just cut it out. So I'm glad that I was able to pick some of these off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, they're all well thought out, and they make sense to me. So good job.
Right. A couple of things that I do want to say about Empire Strikes Back is I love the idea because I guess reading the liner notes, John Williams debuted the Imperial March and Yoda's theme, I think in April of 1980. That was his debut as the director of the Boston Pops Orchestra, and so he debuted those two songs. And it's interesting because those are the two tracks that actually have their own I don't want to say single, but their own particular track. Like the love theme is kind of interwoven. It doesn't have its own cue. The droid motif doesn't have its own cue, that kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting. And then the other thing that I love is during hyperspace, how it kind of combines, it does combine most, if not all, of the old themes in the new. So you have the Force theme, you have the Rebel theme, you have the Imperial March in there, you have the droid theme gets some play, the love theme gets some play, right? So I love, again, talking about tapestries, I love when movies can combine stuff that we've heard and make it sound melodic and, full of adventure and really inspiring. I love how the movie climaxes. And again, it's funny because the movie climaxes with them fixing the Millennium Falcon. That's the big climax of the movie because they've been trying to fix it the whole movie. And they finally do it. And so I don't know, I just love the simplicity of Empire Strikes Back, and I love how adult it is and how massive it is. I just think Empire Strikes Back is just everything. And the mix of philosophy and action. You don't even realize, Ryan, that because they keep jumping back and forth between Vader chasing Han Solo and Leia and Luke training with Yoda. How long does Luke train with Yoda? It seems like he only trains with him for like a day. You know what I mean? Because of all the stuff that Han and Leia are going through. So you don't even think about that stuff happening because it's such a good mix of, you love the adventure space stuff, but then when it comes back to Yoda talking about the Force, you love that too. I just think that the movie's everything you'd want from a sequel. You want something that, again, revisits what you love, but also pushes forward and gives you a new experience.
And part of that is because you have Lawrence Kasdan as one of the screenwriters.
Right.
And Irvin Kershner is directing it. And while I'm not like the most familiar with Kershner's work, it's interesting to think of, while Lucas gets a story by credit, that he has he's kind of hands off with this one.
Yeah. He's making sure that everything kind of works as far as Star Wars goes, but I think he just got caught up, again, quote unquote, got caught up in his empire, and he wanted to focus on that, and he wanted to make industrial light and magic a thing, and again, make it a technological and have it kind of wrap around the movies and have everybody, he wanted to be again, sorry for the pun, he wanted to be a force to be reckoned with. He wanted to create something other than the movies, and so I love that he turned to people that he had faith in to bring his vision to fruition. And again, Lee Brackett, who wrote The Big Sleep, which is one of my favorite movies. I know that he hired her at first, even though she had cancer, and she put together a draft that doesn't really make it to the final screen, but having her name on it gives it a lot of cred, I think. I just like the idea. I don't know. I think I tend to like Star Wars movies better when Lucas is hands off. I don't know if that makes any sense. Unless you count Rise of Skywalker.
Well, we can just not count those 3 movies.
Sure, why not? Yeah, like I said, the first the trilogy, the original trilogy is what kind of defined me as a movie buff. It definitely had a big part in it. So I don't know if I needed anything afterward.
Yeah. I agree, but it was something fun to do in college, at least the prequels.
Sure.
And I was like, oh yeah.
Good conversation starter, right?
It's better than the Matrix movies.
We won't go. We don't have to go there.
Yeah, we don't have to go there.
Speaking of movies that you don't need blanks filled in. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think that's we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Darin, so much for being on the podcast.
I am so sorry that we seem to go around and around and around.
Oh no,
like a wide-ranging conversation, it seemed like, but
just like the rest of 2026.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's something, I don't know. I've really enjoyed this conversation and being a part of what you've built. I feel honored that you asked me to be a part of this. I know it's hard, like when you're friends with people on Twitter, part of you wants to go, hey, I really like your podcast. Would you consider inviting me on sometime? And so I don't know. I just like building a rapport with people. And I feel like you and I have built enough of a friendship that I feel really honored to be able to, as random as my thoughts have been talking about this, because I think that's what a good conversation does. It inspires you to talk about different things than what you just sat down to talk about. So in that way, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it as well. I'll definitely have to get Robert on the podcast as well.
Yeah, you'd love it. You'd love him. Yeah, definitely get him on.
But, I was excited to get you on. We have been talking and doing this dance for a while,
yeah.
but you're one of my favorite you are one of my favorite people to talk to on the internet.
Right back at you, Ryan. Yeah.
So it's always a great conversation, and I look forward to collaborating more with you in the future.
Absolutely.
So if people want to follow you on social media, what is the best way for them to find you?
Well, obviously, if you want to look up NostalgiaCast and Back to Bluey, I find them just by typing NostalgiaCast podcast and then Back to Bluey podcast to find us there. But I do post about like new episodes and my random movie thoughts. On Twitter, I'm at DW Lundberg. On Blue Sky, I'm at dwlundberg.bsky.social. And on Threads, I'm at Darin Lundberg. And you can also find me occasionally on Facebook, but that's mostly to complain about traffic. So,
yeah, and I'll put links to those in our show notes. As well as links to your podcasts.
Thank you.
But we'll have to do this again. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah, I'd love it anytime.